Now, so we'll call this meeting to order. Becky, if you would, please call the roll.
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Chambers Armstrong.
Here.
Senator Berg. Senator Carroll.
Here.
Senator Elkins.
Present.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Present.
Senator Nemes.
Present.
Senator Tishner. Senator Wise. Vice Chair Douglas. Chairman Meredith.
Present. Again, we are constituted, we have a quorum constituted to business, but slight change in our agenda. Senate Bill 71, the bill sponsor asked that to be deferred to a future meeting, so we're going to pass over that today. And what we have remaining is just for information purposes only, but very important information. Before we get into that, though, for the committee's information, Senator Funky Fromeyer brought this to my attention. When we had our original schedule published for this committee, we were to meet at 10 o'clock during this session, but Senator Chris McDaniel asked us to change with him because of his travel distance from northern Kentucky. So throughout this session, we will always be at 9 o'clock rather than 10 o'clock. So if your LA hasn't made that change in your calendar, you'll ask them to do that. We'd appreciate it. But with that, we'll move to our agenda. Our only agenda item, again, is a hearing. It's the annual report on our Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission. And we got some new faces at the table and ask them to come forward. Gentlemen, so good to see you this morning. I was telling Senator Schroeder that even though he's left the chambers, the legend still lives. And good to see him again. But Senator, if you would, please identify yourself for the record, and as well as you, Mr. Evans. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having us. Will Schroeder, I'm Senior Counsel to Attorney General Russell Coleman. It's good to be here this morning.
And I'm Chris Evans, the Executive Director of the Kentucky Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission.
And Mr. Chair, I'll start off by saying in my 8 years as a Senate, I was never invited to speak in front of this committee, so it's an honor. Thanks for giving me that opportunity 3 weeks in the job, and look forward to talking to you today.
Well, now we're particularly excited about this opportunity, but certainly appreciate that. And very serious subject, obviously, and I know you guys got to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose right now with a lot of changes within the AG office, and Mr. Evans, with you being the new director of this program going forward. So I asked Senator Schroeder a week or so ago that just come tell us what we've seen this last year and what we can anticipate that going forward. And I'm hoping at some future point in time we can have some discussion about measures of success, because we're pouring a lot of money into this effort, and I'm very confident you guys will put together a great program. But we certainly want to make sure that we're getting return on our investment for every dollar we're putting in. But with that, please proceed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it would be helpful. The Attorney General Coleman is establishing a great team, very competent individuals with different skill sets to bring a lot to the table. So I would start off by asking Mr. Evans just to give us a little bit, tell the committee about your background and what led you to take the opportunity.
Absolutely. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you this morning. I appreciate it. I know you have a lot of things to cover in this session, so the opportunity to take a little time is appreciated. I will give a little brief summary of my background in terms of the salient points as it relates to the work of the Opioid Abatement Commission. I'm a 29-year veteran of the Drug Enforcement Administration. I originally started my service in the Washington, D.C. area and traveled across the U.S. as a working agent. I eventually became a leader who was asked to start up the first strike force in the Los Angeles area focusing on the Sinaloa cartel. I was asked to develop, lead, and build that. And based on that work, I was later asked to come to Kentucky to start a new division for the Drug Enforcement Administration. That administration that office would cover Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee. That is the first time it had been done in 20 years, and it was given 90 days to start that operation. So in October 2017, we began and became operational in October 2018. Subsequent to that, I was asked to go back to the Washington, D.C. and take over as the Chief of Operations for the Drug Enforcement Administration. So that position entails overseeing all 290 domestic offices for the Drug Enforcement Administration, as well as the 90 foreign offices in 68 foreign countries. So after doing that for 2 years during the change in administration, I was also asked to run the Drug Enforcement Administration. So from January to June of 21, I became the leader of the Drug Enforcement Administration and the 10,000 men and women of that agency. Three key things in my biography or history that I want to make sure that's salient to this. One would be in Louisville, here as a special agent in charge. Back in 2018, we partnered with the Mark Wahlberg Foundation to provide a youth opioid awareness summit. And for that operation, we partnered with JCPS, local partners, and provided a summit for 8,000 kids in Jefferson County to attend regarding opioid overdoses and provide them with knowledge, information in a forum which was conducive to the way that they would take the information in. I also was asked to serve on the Presidential Commission for Law and Administration of Justice in 2020. So that commission oversaw and looked at law enforcement interaction with the communities, as well as all the ways that we address and work with and through and partner with other organizations. So that was a seminal report which was done in 2020 through President Trump's administration. And then in 2021, I sat on the U.S. Synthetic Opioid Commission, Synthetic Combating Opioid Commission, which was also chaired by House member, U.S. House member, and U.S. Senate member. And so I served on that commission also, again, looking at ways to combat the opioid epidemic. So I point those to you to bring that as the relevancy. I've been in Kentucky since 2017. As I talk about leaving and departing and spending time in D.C., during that tenure, my family stayed here. So I have not actually left the state. I've been part of this, and this is home. This is personal to me. It's been my life's work, and I look forward to continuing that in the new role. So thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chair, by way of background, House Bill 427 from the 2021 session created the Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission. That House bill laid out close to 30 different categories, things of consideration that the advisory committee could look at when deciding to award grants. And Mr. Evans, looking at the past year or so, could you tell the committee roughly, I guess, how many grants were issued and what that comes out to?
So what we're looking at is in the numbers that have been given. We look for 2023, approximately 24 projects were awarded grants for approximately $8 million. In 2023, 2024, another 34 projects were awarded grants. Those awards for 2023 just became funded, as many of you know, this past week. So that's another $13.9 million that's going through. And then for Senate Bill 90, another $10.5 million has been funded through the Opioid Commission. So again, a lot of projects, a lot of good work is being developed, being looked at, and being supported through this process.
And you and I have had many conversations about this. And in looking forward, how do you imagine considering new applicants? And I guess what are some of the plans for your role in leading the commission?
So what we've said, and again, the first meeting of the commission was last week. Again, 2 weeks into it, we had the first commission meeting and again went through the business of making sure that those funds were able to continue forward and move through. On January 1st was the opening of the new period for applications for grants. That will run through March 31st, and so we are in the process of moving forward and reviewing those. We want to make sure that as we move forward, we take a really collective view of the process and the grants that come through. We want to make sure that there's clarity, that there's transparency, and there's accountability in the work that we do and the work that the commission does as it relates to the grants. We understand the significance of the money and where it comes from, and the importance that we take care of looking at all avenues and making sure we put best practices into use in terms of making sure that everybody is able to achieve the best for the people of the Commonwealth.
Mr. Chair, with that, I would open up to questions.
Thank you, and I again appreciate you being here this morning. And with 29 years of experience, I never would have guessed that, but we certainly are blessed to have someone that had your background, and glad you're here in Kentucky. Really appreciate the Attorney General's office securing the funds for this program, this commission. Wildly successful in its own right. A lot of money out there that we can throw at this, and that's kind of my concern. Is I don't want to just throw money at things. And it's going to sound like a rhetorical question. I meant that way, but is there a central theme to all of this? Obviously, we want to address the opioid problem, but are there any driving principles of the work of the commission that tells us where we are, where we're going?
Well, to answer that, I think the key thing that's important is that as we're in this early stage in the process for us, is having clarity and full understanding of the work of the commission, what's taking place already, what will continue to take place. There are wheels in motion, as you know, to make sure those things go through. But we have to have the process to be able to identify how things are operating. And again, as I said earlier, in terms of making the best business practices for these things as they go forward, we want to make sure that we continue and install and instill a process of accountability to make sure not just that the money is being spent, but that there is a return on investment for the Commonwealth in terms of the money that's going forward. So that's the process we're currently in right now, is making sure to identify what's already exists and what needs to happen going forward. So we want to be open-minded to look at things to see, again, what the patterns were and what else needs to be done to make sure the program is as strong as it can be.
And Mr. Chair, I would add that, when we're looking at the programs, we're talking about prevention and we're talking about recovery in these programs. So when if there's a theme, those are the kind of two buckets that we are categorizing as these come in. Do they address the prevention aspect? Do they address a recovery aspect?
And I think early on in the discussion about this problem, it was viewed primarily as a urban problem, but we know it's urban, rural, and maybe being a little bit more pronounced if you look at it from a per capita basis in rural Kentucky than urban Kentucky right now. And we are seeing a lot of recovery providers entering the arena to try to address this, and we certainly welcome that. But is there any means to measure the effectiveness of those programs to see that we're really addressing the core issues?
Well, that's what we're trying to ascertain right now, is what mechanisms or what things can we do to try to identify the measures of success. What are they? One of the things we have to be mindful of is that the good work that's often done sometimes may not reflect in the numbers as well as one would like, being that I've said to people on occasion before, the destruction that's caused by this is immense on any family. And so the ability to provide families relief is key to what we're doing. And we want to make sure we reach everybody that we can. But how that looks and how people view it is something we have to make sure we're really clear on and getting some understanding. So it's a hard thing to identify, because, again, if it is your family member who the program helps and assists, that's very meaningful to you. So we want to make sure that we are accountable to all aspects of this. And again, that's the part of what we're trying to go through now, is identify what do those metrics look like and how do you measure that appropriately.
And to that end, I think the involvement of the judiciary system is an unfortunate part of this. How do you see the commission working with the judiciary? Well,
to sum it up, this is an all hands on deck issue, quite honestly. It requires everybody and every hand that we can pull into this in a way that's fulsome, constructive, and collaborative. And I think that's part of what we discussed about here already, is the ability to have that collaborative process. And we want to make sure we engage all parties, because, again, this affects everybody in the Commonwealth. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter, on your socioeconomic status. It affects everybody. So we're looking to collaborate in all hands, and we expect the judiciary, the court systems, the legislature, again, those community groups that we can connect with. That's the method we anticipate going forward with.
Before you assumed the position, there was a lot of discussion about Ibogaine, that program. Are you all, I'm sure you're looking at it, exploring it, but do you see it as part of a viable plan to address opiate addiction?
Well, as we said at the beginning, we're now 3 weeks in. That's a tall ask for 3 weeks in to be able to go through, and I think that's what we're really trying to look at right now, is to get a full, from the outside we have some understanding of what things look like, but from now being in place and being able to look at it, we want to give it that full review and look at to see how we move forward with that and what that looks like.
3 weeks, so Roger, pressure makes diamonds. Senator Funky Fromeyer, you have a question, comments?
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for being here, and Senator Schroeder, thank you for the opportunity that I can be serving in your Senate district. And I know that Kentucky is a vortex, so it pulled you back or kept you here and your family. That's wonderful. So you shared that the Mark Wahlberg Foundation impacted perhaps 8,000 students in Jefferson County schools. And when you shared that prevention and recovery. So I love the upstream aspect of that prevention. I got an opportunity to see our Bellevue Police Department bring the DARE program into the schools and celebrated some 8th graders that have just finished. So I respect it is all hands on deck, no doubt about it. How can we help even amplify those funds? Are there more opportunities for some of this sort of Mark Wahlberg Foundation to be more involved in our schools and getting the message across in a method that young people can hear? And maybe that's a rhetorical question, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we see a real need to get upstream of the problem. We see vaping going through the roof at younger and younger ages in our middle schools and in our elementary schools. So how can we help? Open to knowing and hearing.
Well, thank you. And again, I think that's the thing for us as we move forward, is developing that and being able to express that and explain that and identify ways to look forward and say, here's where we see where we can better move the programs and go through in that collaborative effort. So we look forward to being able to do that and provide you that information.
Senator, apparently the Capitol has a strong pull as well, so it is good to be back. Always good to work with you. As we are going about this, we know there's no need to reinvent the wheel, and a lot of organizations have laid a lot of groundwork. Just last week, we were talking to the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. They did a listening tour. Mr. Evans and I plan to meet with them and review and hear from them about all the data they collected, the input they collected as they went across the Commonwealth, and heard from your constituents about the opioid and drug epidemic. So talking to groups like the Chamber and then so many of the nonprofit organizations nationally and locally that are working to address this, we realize we don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of people we're all, we have the same direction in mind, prevention and recovery. And then, the General Assembly, I'm sure, will continue to be receptive to tweaks that we will identify down the road, and look forward to coming back to you to try to ask to make ourselves better.
Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier, I was telling the chairman I was actually a little late, so I apologize for being a little late. I was having a conversation with another department. I agree with Senator Funky Fromeyer in terms of where we intervene in this whole situation. One of the things I often talk about is my concern that we assume that everyone's addicted when they're not. There is a habituation phase, there is a dependence phase, and then there is an addicted phase. And we tend to put everyone in the addicted phase, and the addicted phase is treated quite differently than the dependent phase. And so I'm really happy to see you gentlemen up here talking about this, because I'm really concerned that often when we put everybody in an addicted phase, we almost say it's not their fault, and therefore there's really not much accountability, when in fact the vast majority of the population is actually in the dependent phase, which has different types of treatment. One of the questions I had is, you talked about collecting data, gathering information, and again, I'm just expressing this as a concern. I often try to find out where that data and who is collecting that data, whether that data is being collected in our universities or tertiary care centers, whether it's being collected from our providers who are essentially boots on the ground, or whether that data is being collected by those people who are actively affected, families and those people who are either in the habituation, the dependence, or the addicted area. And I would just like to throw out those little bits of information. As you said, Senator, so we don't, keep going over the same ground again. But I want to thank you, gentlemen, for bringing this information and for being here this morning.
Thank you.
I'm sure Senator Schroeder is aware. I'm not sure, Mr. Evans, that you are, that Senator Douglas is an anesthesiologist and deals with pain management, so he has a keen interest in this particular subject, and I would offer that he'd be a valuable resource to you as well. Senator Carroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schroeder, it's good to see you, my friend. On a note related to the treatment aspect of it, and Director Evans, you may chime in on this also. I'm noticing in my district that there are recovery homes that are popping up in neighborhoods, and the quality perhaps of what's going on in those homes is of question. So that's as we move forward, and through the AG's office in particular, and you all may have received calls on that we need to be careful as we expand that we're ensuring that the quality is there, and it's it's not just somebody trying to make a quick buck, and I'm afraid that in a couple instances that appears to be what's happening. So just something to bring to your attention. Have there been any discussions on that end and in that particular type of treatment in issues or parameters surrounding those facilities or those homes?
No, at this point, again, at this phase, we're just getting into that process, so I don't have any answers for you in terms of that. But I think that's one of the things on the list to look at is, again, what type of services are being provided. So, again, that's part of the process. We're now still finding that.
And Senator Carroll, I can ask our team to look to see what kind of, if there's a lot of times I know from my current role, having people reached out to me about one in Northern Kentucky, that a lot of times there's federal regulations that come into play with some of those homes. So maybe I can try to see what those are and get a better answer for you to see what federal laws there are and then what state law we already have on the books. But off the top of my head, I'm not so sure.
Thank you both very much, and I'd like to compliment the AG for the hires he has made since he's been in office. Some quality people. That's both of you, and thank you for serving. It's a difficult position you all are going to be in, and huge challenges you're going to face, and I appreciate you stepping up to those challenges.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions, comments from committee members? If not, sincerely appreciate you folks being here, and we do recognize and appreciate that 3 weeks on the job is a relatively short period of time, and I think what we want to impress upon you today is the committee's here to assist in any way we possibly can. I think you recognize that there is some concern that we're putting a lot of money into this effort, rightfully so, a lot of players. Just hope what we're doing is in a coordinated fashion, and you already made reference to return on investment. I think it's so important. We can't afford to squander this money. We need to work together in that coordinated fashion. But a lot of players are at the table, and I can't think of anyone better to try to herd the cat, so to speak, than you two gentlemen, and we look forward to it. And possibly this summer during their interim session, we can invite you back and tell us what you've learned so far and what you see, and give us a more thorough assessment of it. But with that, sincerely appreciate you being here today and look forward to working with you.
Mr. Chair, thank you for having us again. Thank you for those comments, and certainly plan to reach out to many of you and would welcome that opportunity. I think that would be good to come back in front of the interim committee and show what progress we have made and what metrics we're using at that time. Would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. Committee, that's all we have on our agenda today, but I'll remind you again, be aware of that time change for our committee meetings. It will be at 9 o'clock each Wednesday. So our next meeting is Wednesday, January 24th at 9 a.m. And if there are no further business come before this committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you.